Maybe you've seen the pros with their white chains on race day, or maybe you've considered the benefits of immersive chain waxing. Well, today we're diving into the marginal gains of chain treatments, what's available, whether you should use them, and how much time they may save you on race day. Using the right chain lubrication can save you watts. There's no denying that, and I don't think anyone would argue with that. After all, a chain is really a series of metal plates that are pretty much constantly rubbing together. So anything that smooths that and reduces the friction is going to be beneficial. Now you may be thinking we're talking about marginal gains here, but actually the watt savings can be significantly more than marginal. The type of lube you use, how you use it, when you use it, can save a surprising amount of watts. It is undoubtedly the cheapest way to save watts. So it's worth your while taking some time to learn about it and how to do it right. Historically, bicycle chains were lubed with oil. Remember 3-in-1? It was invented in 1894 specifically for the bicycle chain. And it was made of 97% petroleum crude oil. It's actually still made today by the company that now owns it, WD-40 Company, which also makes WD-40. And you shouldn't use it on your chain anymore. And you also shouldn't use WD-40 on your chain either, in case you still were. Get rid of that. A lot has changed since 1894, and these days you walk into a bike shop and the selection of bike chain lubes available to you is pretty overwhelming. Wet, dry, synthetic, wax, Teflon, polymerizing, or some combination of all of the above. So what is the difference? And more importantly, what is the best? First, let's quickly run through the types of chain lube. Basically, a chain lube is defined by what it's used for and what it's made of. What it's used for is generally defined by wet, as in used for wet riding conditions, dry, as in used for dry riding conditions, even if the substance itself is wet when it comes out the bottle, or all condition or all weather, which means you can use it in wet or dry conditions. Now you may ask yourself at this point, if all condition exists, why does wet and dry exist? Because you could use all condition. But of course, there's some compromises. If it's always dry where you ride and it never rains, then dry lube is going to be better than the all condition lube. Now what they're made of is generally oil-based, wax-based, or polymer-based. Oil-based is, as the name suggests, an oil-based lube that's made out of oils, and these are generally the wet lubes for riding in rains because obviously the oils repel moisture. And then you have polymer-based lubes, which are essentially a liquid plastic that have an oil base which then evaporates and leaves a clear liquid plastic coating over your whole chain. So which is best? The answer, unsurprisingly, is it depends. It depends on where you ride, the conditions you face, and to no small extent, your personality. Yep. If you're someone who tends to not think about it and not lube their chain for weeks at a time, you're probably going to need a different lube to someone who meticulously looks after their bike and cleans it after every ride and re-lubes it. Now, I could go into crazy detail here, going through all the different chain lubes, how to use them, how to prepare your chain for them, when to apply them, when to reapply them. Seriously, I could go on for hours, but I'm going to cut to the chase. I'm going to get down to just answering the questions about chain lubrication that you didn't even know you're supposed to be asking. Before we do, remember to like this video if you are enjoying it and subscribe to GTN so you don't miss any of our future videos. Right, let's get to those answers. Answer number 1, you probably don't need a wet lube. A wet lube is very specific for wet riding, very wet riding. Now, if you are commuting daily to work and getting caught in the rain really often and don't have time to wash your bike every day, which you probably don't if you're commuting, then a wet lube might be for you. However, if you're occasionally getting caught in the rain, maybe once a week on your long ride, and then you're washing your bike right after, which you should be, then you probably don't need a wet lube. A wet lube is going to attract more dirt and all those other rides you do, and it's going to create more of a mess in your car, in your garage, and probably on your calves. Answer number 2. You probably should opt for a wax lube. Wax lubes have come a long way. Originally, when you started using wax on a chain, the only option was really to dunk your chain in a pot of molten wax. These days, the clever scientists have come up with little bottles of these wax emulsions where the wax is suspended in a solvent, and then you can apply it in your chain in a liquid form. The solvent then evaporates and leaves your chain with a nice waxy coating. The advantage of this over the wet lube is that wax chains are dry. They dry into a solid coating, which means dust and dirt don't adhere to it, unlike that wet lube. The addition of additives like Teflon and PTFE means that they provide great friction reduction without all the dirt and grime. The only disadvantage of wax lubes is that water is not their friend. A quick rain shower, a deep puddle, and you can see most of your lube get completely washed away and leave your chain almost completely unlubed and noisy and slow. Well, slower. Answer number 3. You should clean and degrease your chain first. Wax-based lubes will be significantly less effective and less long-lasting if they're competing with oils that are already on your chain. In that battle, the oils will always win and the wax will not last very long at all. Now, even new chains come pre-greased. So if you're going to use a wax lube, thoroughly cleaning and degreasing your chain will pay dividends. Now, if that seems like a pain in the butt, especially for a new chain, well, there is a solution. Consider buying a pre-treated chain, such as that by Ceramic Speed or Ice Friction. These chains have already gone through that process and then been treated with a wax-based coating. So basically, they've done the legwork for you of cleaning that new chain, and then you can just continue using your wax-based drip lube. Answer number 4. Immersive waxing is probably a waste of time. Immersive waxing is the process of dunking a chain in a pot of molten wax and then pulling it out, letting it dry, and installing it on your bike. And as I've already said, this used to be the only way of getting a wax chain. And I can already hear the keyboard warriors in the comment section down below going, it is still the best way to get a wax chain. And yes, you're right. This is the gold standard to get a clean and perfectly waxed chain. The wax penetrates deeply and coats every surface of the chain. And yes, it will be the best way to wax your chain. However, it's probably still a waste of time. I'm going to pause here quickly and explain what the whole process entails before I go any further. All right, the process of immersive waxing, if you were to do it today, if you did want to take it upon yourself, because yes, it is the gold standard. As I said, you have to have a perfectly clean chain. Now, there's various ways you could do this. You could use multiple baths in different solvents. This is a specific chain stripper and wax prep, which is specifically for removing all oils and oil-based substances off your chain. You can also dunk your chain in multiple solvents and leave it for some time, put some elbow grease into it even. Whatever you do, you need to get it completely clean. You can also use one of these wash tanks, which is an ultrasonic cleaner, and this is actually the best way of doing it because you dunk it in there in a solvent and the ultrasonic cleaner makes sure you get absolutely everything off. And then you clean it and then you dry it after that. And then you're going to use one of these, a dipper tank, which is a bit like a deep fryer. And you're going to put your chain inside there. You're going to put wax pellets, such as these. See that little wax pellets? You're going to pour them in there. This is the Silka Secret Chain Wax. It's got all kind of additives with the wax that's going to melt down. You're going to heat it up to between 80 and 100 degrees Celsius. And then you're going to dunk your chain in there and pull it out, and you have a perfectly coated chain. Now, I'm not actually allowed to show you how I do this because I'm not allowed to do it here because of health and safety and fire codes. And you're also going to need all kinds of protective wear. You're going to probably need some respirator for the solvents that you're going to use, or at least do it in a well-ventilated area. You're going to need eye protection. You're going to need hand protection for the hot wax that you're going to be dealing with. So you can see how it's quite a lot of work when you could just use a drip wax. Now, the bike geeks do still do this, and you can do this. You don't even need this really fancy equipment. You just need the solvents and slow cooker. And what the bike geeks will do generally is do 4 or 5 chains at once, and then it's just a matter of simply swapping their chain out, and then once a month or thereabouts, doing all 5 chains again, treating them again. You can obviously see that the sticking point here is the man hours involved. And to be honest, the reason why I said this truth, that it's probably a waste of time, is because the drip wax coatings have come so far as to make the gains that you get from this almost negligible. I'm still saying, I understand, it is the gold standard in chain treatment. You are not going to get a better, cleaner, faster chain than immersive wax treatment. However, you may be a better rider if you spend the time you were immersively waxing your chain actually riding and used a drip wax. I'm just saying. Truth number 5. The only time your chain really matters is race day. Of course, you're doing all this chain preparation to be fast on race day. Yes, having a silky smooth, well looked after chain in training is great, and a well looked after chain will last longer and will also make your components last longer, so you should look after it. But when it comes to watt savings, the only time that really matters is race day. And this is where a race day chain comes in. Now, you've probably seen the pros arriving at transition with their white coated chains. Now, they didn't spill their energy drink powder all over their chain while they were traveling to the race. That is a specially treated race day chain. Essentially, the race day chain has gone through the exact process we just mentioned. A company that is selling speed has bought the chain from SRAM or Shimano and then stripped it down, cleaned it completely, and immersed it in their wax treatment. And each one of these companies will claim that their wax treatment is the fastest, but essentially they're all wax with some kind of additives like PTFE or Teflon, and they all have basically the same principles. The wax treatment that they put on will last around 150 to 300 kilometers, so it should easily get you through race day. But if you're doing an Ironman, it's not going to get you much further than that. However, the chain is then pre-treated. It's got completely cleaned, and you can start using one of these wax-based lubes on it without any problem, without having to re-clean your chain or anything like that. These race day chains are definitely the best bet for fast, frictionless race day. Now, they do cost $70 to $100 more than a new chain itself, but of course they've already gone through that whole treatment, and you can simply carry on using your drip lube on them afterwards and use it for many, many miles afterwards. So for 1 or 2 big races a year, they're definitely worthwhile. Of course, we do often get the question, but what if it rains on my bike overnight? Unfortunately, the reality is, even with these race day chains, as we said, water is not a wax-treated chain's best friend, and you will lose some of the efficiency of that race day chain if it gets wet overnight in transition. So the best solution is, of course, to cover it in transition the night before, even if you cannot put full bike covers on, because some bike races don't allow that, but at least put a cover over your drive chain, such as a black plastic bag or something. If they still won't allow that, then your next best solution is to simply bring one of the good drip chains, wax drip chains, and treat it on the morning before you start. Generally, I think that even if it does rain overnight, you should be able to keep your chain mostly dry and get you at least to the race start with the fastest chain possible. Well, we hope we've given you some useful information today on how you can save some watts and choose the right chain lube for your race day. So Are you still using your 3-in-1 sewing machine oil? Or have you adopted your favorite drip lube? Or are you still bashing your keyboard saying, immersive waxing is the only way? Whatever it is, thanks for watching, and here's to many miles of smooth riding.